Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Paradigm Shifting Books. Stephen here.
With Britain.
Yeah, and today's going to be a little bit of a different episode. Britt, do you want to explain what we're going to do?
Every now and then, not all the time, but every now and then we're just going to do a little unique little power principle episode. Whenever we feel like from one of the books that we covered, there's just a unique principle that deserves kind of its own little segment, we'll do that. So hopefully keep this to around 15 minutes. If you have a very short drive and you don't want to listen to a whole podcast, but you just have a little bit of time for something that will uplift you, that's kind of the goal.
Absolutely. So today we got 7 habits here again. And obviously we're biased because our grandfather is the one who inspired us in the first place to kind of do a podcast like this. And so today the principle we're going to be covering is habit 1, be proactive. And again, I know you don't want to listen to us talk the whole time. So we found 2 really great clips of our grandfather. This is him speaking in front of an audience back in like the 80s probably or 90s. We're just going to hop right in, and our grandfather's you're going to hear from him himself. And this is audio that Britt and I have listened to many times over the years, and it's really helped us. And we felt like this was really relevant in today's world and what a lot of people are going through. So let's jump right in and listen to the first clip.
Habit 1, be proactive, basically means that your life is a product of your values, not your feelings. That your life, or the organization's life, is a product of your decisions, not your conditions. The opposite of being proactive is to be reactive, which basically means that your life is a function of your feelings, your moods, your impulses, other people's treatment. The underlying principle of habit 1, be proactive, is to take responsibility. The concept is you and I have the capacity to choose our response. If you don't believe that you're capable of choosing your own response, if you don't have that vision of yourself, if you're deep into victimism, I'll just about guarantee you will become disempowered. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist, imprisoned in the death camps of Nazi Germany because he was a Jew, experienced unbelievable indignities and tortures. He was raised in the Freudian tradition that you're basically a product of your childhood. He worked on that assumption, that paradigm. But while he was in the death camps, he began to observe some very interesting things. Some people were animals, others were saints, with the same circumstances. He himself experienced terrible things. Some of his own loved ones were cremated. He expected the same fate. For some reason, they saved him for experimental purposes. One day, they stripped him naked, put him under white light, and began to perform those ignoble sterilization experiments upon his body, and he discovered what he called the last human freedom. The power to choose my response to any condition, to anything that happens to me, he called the last human freedom. Between that stimulus and our response is a space. In that space lies our power and our freedom to choose our response. In these choices lie our growth and our happiness. In other words, with the right choices, eventually the response we choose begins to influence the stimulus. This is heavy-duty stuff, particularly for people that have had years and years of explaining away their misery in the name of somebody else. One time, a woman stood up in the middle of a group like this and started to give a speech on her own, spontaneously. And then she sensed the inappropriateness of that, grew a little embarrassed and sat back down, but she could not restrain herself from talking to everyone around her. She was just filled with some kind of explosive learning or excitement. And she had positive energy. You could see it in her eyes and her gestures, her body language. I could hardly wait to the break to get up to her. What happened to you? Oh, you have no idea what that principle, that habit of being proactive means to me. I'm the full-time nurse to the most miserable, ungrateful character you can imagine. He doesn't even acknowledge me, let alone show any form of appreciation. The other full-time nurses feel just like I do. We almost sit around and talk about his demise. Hope for it, wish for it, while we're taking care of him. And for you to have the gall to suggest that I chose to be miserable? Come on. I didn't choose it. He made me. But then I realized how dependent I am, how I've given my power to his miserable behavior. She said, as soon as I swallowed that big, thick, bitter pill, and it hit, and I realized, wait a minute, if I chose to be miserable, I can choose otherwise. She said, I was let out of prison. I was liberated. That's when I stood up. I wanted to talk to everyone. I wanted to proclaim my freedom. I could not contain myself. I just can't tell you what that means. Between what happens to us, the stimulus, and our response to the stimulus lies our freedom.
I think what is so powerful to me about that clip is just the idea of when you take ownership of things like that in your life. At first, it seems daunting because then it's on you. You can't blame anyone else, right? Then it's on you. But really, it's empowering. And I found this for myself, but also for other people, is people want to feel empowered like that, like they control their life, not somebody else. So whether this is for you or you have someone else in your life or a child, this principle is empowering. It's not daunting. It's actually inspiring to take control.
Absolutely. The next clip we're going to share, and the final clip we'll end with our grandfather again, is a clip where he goes a little bit deeper into be proactive. So he builds on what he talked about before, but he talks about the idea of the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And we'll throw up a graphic so you can kind of see what that looks like. But I love the way that he articulates this and shares a great story of an example of a person who worked within his circle of influence and not as concerned, and basically how his circle of influence grew. So we just felt, again, that today, this idea around habit one, be proactive, take responsibility for your life, be able to choose your response, and then this concept of circle of influence and concern is just really relevant for today's world. So with that, we will see you again in a week, but we'll end this with our grandfather teaching circle of influence, circle of concern.
Think on it this way. 2 circles. The larger outer circle, you call the circle of concern. Things you're concerned about, things you're worried about. But then there is an inner circle that's very small that are concerns you have influence over. Where do proactive people focus their energies? Which circle? The inner circle. Where do reactive people focus their energies? The outer circle. Why? Because they're victimized. Always work on the inner circle. It is a marvelous thing. It is inevitable. Inevitable. If you work on the inner circle, it'll get larger. Always. Why? The energy there is positive. I could take you to not tens, but to hundreds, perhaps even thousands by now, of organizations that are going through a profound transformation, and it started with a person at the bottom. Let me share with you one of the most powerful, instructive, illuminating experiences along this line of habit one, to be proactive, that I've ever had. I worked with an organization for 4 years and was the assistant to the president. He was a very dynamic, visionary person. So talented, so intelligent, so visionary, that it could just about compensate for a multitude of sins. as far as the outside world was concerned. But his style was very controlling and dictatorial. Consequently, all the people around felt that they were treated like gophers, as if they had no judgment of their own. Go for this, do this, gopher, 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 see? And they would sit around, basically, in the executive corridors, confessing the president's sins. Slopping war stories. Let me tell you the latest. I had things going. He came into my department, gave a different signal, and totally disrupted the whole. You think that's... Wait till you hear this one. Hey, why don't we get together at lunch? We can go further into it. It's fun. It's fun because it becomes a kind of common cement that unites you. Construction people have the expression bad mud, meaning if the basic content of the brick is flawed, you stress the brick, it'll break. It's the same thing happens every time you badmouth. It's bad mud. At the time, it unites you, but you take a stress on that relationship, it'll break it, because they know you're doing the same thing. The inner circle withers. One man, name was Ben. He was proactive. His life was not a function of the president's weaknesses. He was aware of them. They were in his circle of concern, but not his circle of influence. Therefore, he smiled a lot. He didn't disempower himself. He used his strengths to compensate for the president's weaknesses in his own small circle of influence, with his own people. Very strong, considerate, courageous, buffer. He ran with the president's strengths, which were prodigious, enormous. So in his area, the president's strengths and his strengths compensated for the president's weaknesses. Started to cause his circle to get larger in his own area. He also exercised so much more initiative. He was treated like a gopher. Go for this, go for this. But he was the best gopher around. He not only went for the data, he tried to anticipate the need. I think the president wants that for a board meeting. I'm going to give him the data, the analysis of the data, and the recommendations based on that analysis. And I'm going to put it in the presentation form. The president would say to me, I can't believe, man. It's just amazing, really. Look what he's done. I asked him to get this. He anticipated my need. He's analyzed it. He developed alternative recommendations. He came up with one, and it's in the form that I can make to the board. I think I'll have him make it. Circle of influence. Next meetings. Go for this. Go for this. Go for this. Go for this. Ben, what's your opinion? What do you think the reactive minds did in the executive corridors that day? See, reactive people are always looking for evidence. I'll bet there's some kind of favoritism going on here. The problem is, Ben dealt with them in the same way he dealt with the president. Over a 4-year period, I saw Ben become the number 2 person in the organization. His circle of influence got so large. Even the president would not make any significant moves without Ben's blessing.